Hello everyone, it's good to be back after a few months. I'm going to continue with my analyses of the Happy Wheels speedruns and tackle the behemoth that is the any percent route. But before I do that, I would like to give a great congratulations to my fellow speedrunner, Dre. On the 24th of December, 2021, Dre achieved this run.
And slowly you come to realize it's all as it should be. You can only do so much if you're game enough. You could place your trust in me. For the love of life, there's a trade-off. We could lose it all, but we'll go down fighting.
I did it. Dawn of the Dead. Apparently the hardest level.
Dre completed demo percent in 2 minutes and 59 seconds, smashing the final minute barrier in the category's history. The movement in this run is just immaculate throughout. The only real flaw in the run is a reset on Dawn of the Dead, which cost him 2.5 seconds. And this just came completely out of nowhere. I wasn't even aware that Dre was still running demo percent. After his 311 in 2020, there was no change in the leaderboard for more than a year. When I started running demo percent on a whim in November, it was seemingly a dead category. When I said that sub 3 should be achieved eventually, that was mostly wishful thinking. I didn't expect that it would happen anytime soon. We may not have a lot of visibility in the larger speedrunning community, but for me, seeing that the speedrunning community of my all-time favorite game is still alive and well, it's a great ending to a shitty year. And Dre isn't finished. He is determined to break the 250 barrier, which he is very close to achieving. He's gotten his times down lower than ever before, mostly by improving the precision and consistency of his movements in each level. The record currently sits at a 251, which Dre achieved this February, and who knows how much lower the record may go.
That was for you, Red.
I hope to see many more great Happy Wheels speedruns in 2022. I may even do some myself if I can find the time. Without further ado, on with the video. Happy Wheels is a game that has millions of user-made levels, and the number increases every day. Obviously, no player can complete every single level in a single playthrough, or even a lifetime for that matter. This poses a quandary for full game speedruns. How do you complete the game? You can't. There's always more game to play. To keep it simple, the community came to the agreement that the 9 levels of the demo version count as the full game for the purposes of full game speedruns. It's always just those 9 levels, regardless of how many millions of levels have appeared in the browser since the game started. Demo percent is listed as a full game category on speedrun.com, and it's considered the main sought-after record among top runners. Now, this isn't the only category. There's this other, less popular category that's simply called any percent. To date, only 2 runners have submitted runs in this category, and the record is 4 hours, 31 minutes, and 32 seconds. These 2 players, Ewan111 and Lupus, undertook the tremendous task of completing every completable featured level in Happy Wheels. When Ewan and Lupus completed these runs in April of 2019, there were 132 completable featured levels. Now there are about 136. It's actually barely increased in almost 3 years. The player skips over any feature level that doesn't have a win condition. Sorry, my shotgun, that includes you. Nothing personnel. I'm not going to give an in-depth discussion of the strategies used in every single level of these runs, because that would take way too long. I want to finish this series sometime this decade. Further, most of the newer featured levels are far more mechanically complex in comparison to the original 9. There are several levels on this list that I haven't played extensively, and that I honestly don't understand well enough to provide informed explanations. If anyone wants to explain what the hell is going on in Alaskan Fisherman, be my guest. I'll briefly cover a few levels that are important in the run. Before I even watched either of the submitted runs, I knew that Legacy of Quetzal would be the level that takes the longest. And I was right. Lupus took more than an hour on that one level. Ewan finished it in a very respectable but still tedious 30 minutes. I lost count of exactly how many times he played it. Anyway, both of these men have done much better than I've been able to do. I've played this level for a few hours, and I've never been able to beat it. The farthest that I've gotten is here, but then my cart imploded for literally no reason. This is probably the most despised featured level in Happy Wheels. It has one of the lowest star ratings, which is why it's near the end of the list. Despite having over 6 million plays, it only has 81 complete replays. That's an extremely low rate of completion, especially for a featured level. And the level creator has the nerve to say that he fixed some bugs and frustrating parts. How broken was it before? On the individual level leaderboard, there's only a single submission, which is by Ewan. Nobody else wants this record. Ewan humorously labels the level as Trash Quetzal in his any % run. To win the level, you have to know every single obstacle well in advance. The player has no time to react. You'd have to carefully adjust your speed for obstacles that aren't even on screen yet. There are multiple jumps like this one. It's a completely blind jump. My speed and angle have to be just right. If I'm too slow, I fall short and hit the spikes. If I'm too fast, I hit my head on the ceiling of the cave. Ewan worked out a somewhat consistent method to clear this jump. He comes down the tracks at full speed. About here, he leans forward and drags the front of the cart across the track to slow down somewhat without stopping. With practice, it's possible to change speed by a precise increment, depending on when the player leans forward. In his individual level run, he doesn't slow down here. Instead, he flips around and touches the cave ceiling with the wheels and he rolls off of it. That method is more difficult. Once I get the cart on the mid-level where I move backward, I really don't have the option of slowing down anymore. There are arrow guns and there's a boulder chasing me down. I have to go as quickly as possible to avoid getting crushed. All of the while, I'm trying to jump just the right distance to get from one platform to another. Explorer Guy can't really jump, though. I can only slightly control the angle at which he moves through the air by how I lean the cart and position the wheels. I'm basically at the mercy of the level's geometry and the speed that I'm able to achieve. If I get a bad start and I'm just slightly too slow to clear these gaps normally, some of these jumps are basically impossible to pull off. I'll hit the edge of the platform and usually fall to my death. This level demands an unreasonable level of precision of movement. There's no way to consistently hit all of the right movements with Explorer Guy's limited controls, and the level is excruciatingly difficult to play. It's especially annoying to have to adjust the cart's angle at points where I can't even see the cart behind the foreground. By the way, Explorer Guy has relatively weak joints. Impacts that wouldn't phase some other characters can easily break his limbs, and that's especially true when he's going quickly. He'll fall out of his cart if he breaks both arms and one leg. Most of my runs have ended like that. I don't even get to be crushed by the rocks or something, because less than half of the way through the level, he's already fallen out of the cart with broken limbs. And there's no way to avoid these impacts. The level requires that I move at high speed, change direction several times, and hit walls. The player can't even slow down once the cart is past the major hazards of the level. Near the very end, there's a sheer wall that the cart has to go up. To get all of the way up to the metal rail, the cart has to maintain a high speed. If it loses too much speed, there isn't enough space to build it back up. Lupus had more than one run end like this. There are so many factors in this level that just feel extremely unfair. They can completely ruin the run if any one of them works against the player. Sometimes one of these 3 chains won't break in time. That can result in Explorer Guy getting stuck in place with a lot of rock debris, either losing several seconds or having to restart the level entirely. If this final chain doesn't break in time, I'll have nowhere to go as the boulder rolls over me and kills me. If the boulder falls down in front of the player on the cave floor, and you're not fast enough to get in front of it before it falls all of the way, there's no way to get past it. It completely blocks the way. Your only recourse is to reset the level entirely. It looks like Ewan found some sort of shortcut in his personal best individual level run. He didn't maintain enough speed to get on top of this platform, so he hit the edge and fell down onto some spikes. Then he backed up and fell down onto the cave floor below, which leads to the exit. This method is probably super inconsistent, even if you know what you're doing. It's very likely that the player would break multiple limbs from the repeated impacts of hitting the platform and then falling down a long distance. Ewan did not use this method in his demo percent run. He went for the more consistent route of going down the statue's mouth. The upward incline before the opening slows the cart down somewhat, so he's less likely to be injured when he hits the wall. The wall also gradually slopes down as it leads to the cave floor. It's better to maintain contact with this surface to slow down, instead of decelerating all at once when the cart drops down from the upper platform onto the floor. If you get around all of these factors and beat this extremely unfair level, that's an achievement in itself. To do it at the end of a 4.5-hour speedrun is on another level. The version of Snowy Mountain that is currently playable in the web version of Happy Wheels is actually slightly different from the version that exists in the demo. In the demo, there are these red triangle shapes that serve as demarcators between the different sled paths at the top of the mountain. In the web version, the triangles are thinner and they are blue instead of red. I have no idea why this difference exists. It's plausible that the level creator edited the level at some point because he didn't like the original look. But changes that you make in the level editor don't affect changes in levels that have already been uploaded to the browser. This tells me that the creator, Mr. Disaster88, must have re-uploaded a new version of the level at some time. Then Jim featured the new version and unfeatured the older one. Evidently, Snowy Mountain Final wasn't as final as we were led to believe. Anyway, that's not the change that affects speedrunning strategies, that's just the most noticeable change. What I really want to focus on is this. At the beginning of the level in the newer version, the higher of the 2 boost panes is placed slightly closer to the player. This outcome probably wasn't intentional, and I can't explain the difference in precise terms, but I think that this rearrangement of the boost panes makes it easier to pull off the Snowy Mountain time skip. I find that the setup to get pushed under the platform is much more consistent with the higher pane closer to the player. In the web version, I'm able to get under the platform about 75% of the time. My rate of success is less than 50% in the demo version. I've even been able to successfully skip the sled by dropping down onto the snow and letting the fan push me up from ground level. Then I can fall back down with enough speed to break free from the boost panes. That's something that I've never known to be possible in the demo version. Just to get a second opinion, I reached out to Dre and asked for his thoughts on the differences in the web version. He played the web version for a while, and he did not have my same experience. He found the timing of the boost pane skip to be quite inconsistent in the web version. Now, I recently found out that Dre has far less experience playing the web version of Happy Wheels in comparison to the demo version. His muscle memory from his many hours of practice for demo percent surely plays some factor in his outcomes. Dre also prefers to jump up and push off of the tow rope at the beginning, though he also tried my method of waiting for the rope to start pulling Segway Guy. For all that I know, the particular arrangement of boost panes in the demo version may make the jumping method more consistent. I'm really not good enough at that technique to say otherwise. Whether or not the placement of these boost panes has any significant effect on the speed of an optimal run, I'm not sure. The fastest run on Snowy Mountain that I've seen in the demo version is a 34.23. Dre achieved this time in his now obsoleted 3:12 demo percent run from October 2020. At 34.23 seconds, that makes Dre's run moderately faster than the listed individual level record in Snowy Mountain. The listed record is a 34.73 by QWERTY from VeggieTales, played in the web version. Interestingly, I checked the replay browser, and it lists a 33.10, also achieved by QWERTY. This run completely blows away any other, beating Dre's best time in the demo by over a second. Unfortunately, it seems that QWERTY never uploaded a video of this run, and it's now inaccurate since Happy Wheels has jumped platforms to JavaScript. We may never know the exact strategies that QWERTY used to achieve this extremely fast run, or how much it relied on the unique differences in the web version of the level. Of course, differences in movement probably played some factor in the differences in times between QWERTY and Dre. QWERTY positions Segway Guy on his knees, which is fast but inconsistent. Dre uses his signature crab walk, which is a bit slower, but which apparently makes it easier to grab this ledge consistently. In general, fast movement is a lot easier in the web version because the grabbing controls are more responsive. I think that the Snowy Mountain skip is one that runners could realistically integrate in an any % run. Though it is very difficult and precise, there are multiple factors working together to make it more consistent than in the demo version. Runners could save something like 20 to 25 seconds on this level alone, if they pull it off right.
Hey everyone, Future Dan here. While I was putting the finishing touches on this video, a certain speedrunner unexpectedly appeared in my YouTube feed. And that runner just dropped a bomb on this level, completing it in 27.8 seconds. You already know who I'm talking about. That's classic Dre, just showing up after more than a month since his last upload, and blowing the minds of myself and maybe a handful of people who actually follow Happy Wheels speedrunning seriously. But it's no big deal. As of my writing this, he hasn't even gotten around to submitting this run for the individual level leaderboard. If I hadn't seen it, I wouldn't have thought that a 27 were even possible. In a game like Happy Wheels, that has been played by many millions of people over the course of more than 11 years, it is exceedingly rare to shave more than 5 seconds off of a 33-second record. To do that without discovering a new shortcut is... I don't even know what to call that. Look at this! This is all movement. With some extremely fast and rhythmically precise hand movements, Dre was able to cha-cha his way down the mountain at epic speed. This technique is, surprisingly, way faster than any other known method to get down this slope.
Dre used a less refined version of this method in his now obsoleted 259 demo %.
For years, players have used one of two methods to get down the slope. They've either put Segway Guy on his back and waved his arms up and down, or put him on his knees to grab the floor and push him backward, as is the standard method on the less steep areas of the slope. This is one of the last places where I would have expected to find such a major time save. Getting down this steep slope is such a mundane part of what's otherwise a difficult speedrun. For years, we've taken it for granted that we'd had that part figured out. What's even awesomer about this time save is that it should work essentially the same in both versions of the level, demo and web. Because the slope is way down here, the placement of the boost panes has no effect on one's ability to set up Dre's fast ascension. You just have to be able to push buttons really good. When I put the videos side by side, I can see that the majority of Dre's time saving over all other record runs is due to this new method of movement. The start of Dre's 27.8 is somewhat faster than the start of his 34.2.
Probably because he used the slower crab walking method in his old personal best.
But once he's hit this slope, I can see that Dre starts to significantly outpace both his old PB and QWERTY's. Who knows, maybe we'll even see movement on this level in full game runs one day. Of course, 5 seconds out of 30 seconds is a lot more significant than 5 seconds out of 3 minutes or 3 hours, but still.
When I contacted Dre to research for this video, he also provided me with a very insightful explanation of the setup that he uses to consistently get past the final fan without getting blown past the finish line. He uses whatever method of movement allows him to get down to the final slope, whether that involves putting Segway Guy on his stomach or on his back.
Once he's on level ground near the finish line, he gets Segway Guy on his knees and inches him closer and closer to the fan, stopping at approximately this point, where his hand is directly above and slightly to the right of the top right edge of the fan. He doesn't get blown upward just yet, because he's not yet overlapping the fan's airstream. The fan is angled anti-clockwise, so he has to move a short distance to the left to hit the airstream. Dre then pushes him very slightly into the airstream, so that only the very tips of his legs are in the stream. The legs start to rotate clockwise, and the whole body moves leftward. When his arms enter the airstream, they are pushed clockwise as well, causing the whole body to rotate quickly and gain a high angular velocity. Dre repeatedly inputs down on the arrow keys to keep Segway Guy in this outstretched position. This position maximizes the surface of the body that is subject to the wind, allowing him to maintain this high angular velocity. Segway Guy continues to move to the left, but he does not go very far. He lands comfortably on the finish line. Dre claims that this high rotational velocity negates a portion of the character's linear velocity, allowing him to travel a shorter horizontal distance, and to not get blown past the finish line. The relationship between angular velocity and linear velocity in Happy Wheels is not well understood, but I think that I can maybe try to understand why this happens. Red Ball is another game that runs in the Box 2D engine, and its physics are well understood by its task community. In Red Ball, the character has a practical limit of 5 units of linear velocity when rolling on the ground, though it is possible to exceed this limit and to move more quickly by exploiting flaws in the game's programming. When the game detects that Red Ball's linear velocity exceeds 5, it tries to bring the linear component back down to 5 by converting the remainder into angular velocity. I think that something similar may be happening in Happy Wheels. Perhaps there's a block somewhere in the game's programming that states that the character's linear velocity should not exceed a certain value under a certain set of circumstances. When Segway Guy hits this airstream, his velocity quickly increases and gets close to the intended cap. The game tries to slow him down by converting some of that extra velocity to rotational. By putting Segway Guy in a position where he's able to achieve a higher rotational velocity, Dre can better retain the portion of the velocity that was converted from linear to rotational. This has the effect of making Segway Guy travel a shorter horizontal distance than he otherwise would, and he lands safely on the finish line. Speed caps are a tricky subject in Happy Wheels because the character's maximum velocity seems to vary widely, depending on the specific set of circumstances. If he's riding along on a flat platform, Segway Guy stops accelerating after a certain point. I've calculated that his default terminal riding speed is approximately 19.5 pixels per frame, or 585 pixels per second. Pixels are the native unit of the level editor, used to represent the dimensions of shapes. It's possible to go much faster than this supposed limit by moving Segway Guy with various level hazards. If speed caps do explicitly exist in the programming of Happy Wheels, as they do in Red Ball, it's another matter in itself to figure out when exactly they apply. And of course, the physics of Segway Guy's body are much more complex than those of Red Ball, because his body consists of several shapes that can rotate relative to each other. But still, I think that we are at a good start with my hypothesis based on Dre's observations. If someone who has a good understanding of the Box 2D engine wants to do further tests, please do.
Well, back to the script.
The Any% run also contains a level called Mount Mayhem, which is basically a more modernized remake of Snowy Mountain. It has multiple paths like the original level. The player takes a ski tow and drops down into the sled. The quick and easy route is to take a sled that goes downhill and to a finish line on the left. This level also requires a lot of waiting. It's made by Mr. Disaster 88, the same creator of Snowy Mountain. This level does have a secret exit that's slightly faster than the normal route, and it's freaking insane. This is a run, again by QWERTY from VeggieTales. At the beginning of the level, Segway Guy drops down into a trailer, which brings him to the ski tow. QWERTY breaks one of his arms by landing in a certain way. Then, he intentionally falls out of the truck and grabs the road. He begins to push himself backward, similarly to the method in Snowy Mountain. Eventually, he gets to a piece of road that isn't set to collide with the player character. If he were to crawl over here, he'd fall straight through. So he rips off his broken arm and uses it as a sort of zipline handle to slide down the rest of the length of the road. For some weird reason, the veins of broken limbs collide with objects differently from regular body parts. They can get snagged on the edge of a shape like this. This is the only time that I've ever seen someone using this obscure bug in a strategy to beat a level. This shortcut saves about 12 seconds. How anyone discovered this is beyond me. Ewan and Lippus did not use this method, probably because of how insanely difficult it is. Head Shooter is a level on which you really have to take your time. Your speed is limited very much by the slow walking speed of the gunman. He accelerates to his top speed if you hold right, and there isn't anything that you can do to speed him up significantly. A typical good run is about 65 seconds. You can't get much faster than that without using some major exploit. Generally, you should shoot each human enemy as soon as he passes through your line of fire. Defeat them as quickly as possible so that they don't have a chance to shoot you. The bull is the most inconsistent enemy in this level, and the one that kills most otherwise good runs. Its charging body can still kill your gunman, even if you shoot it in the head in time. And right before the bull, there's a man who throws an axe. You have to either stop or slow down to avoid the falling axe. If you just keep going at full speed, the axe will fall directly on your head. I find that the quickest way to get through here is to stop short slightly before the area where the axe lands. When the bull charges, I fire one shot at point-blank range, and the bull flies cleanly over my head. Ewan chose instead to back up to avoid the axe. The bull actually knocked the axe out of the way as it was charging, but that doesn't always happen. Because he backed up, he had more space to shoot the bull, and he shot earlier than he had to. This caused the bull to fly up high in an arc and come back down. Ewan quickly reversed his direction at the right time and moved forward to avoid getting hit by the bull. The current individual level record is 43.2 seconds. Some runners figured out how to trigger the win condition from the area in front of the bull. The player runs right up to the bull and lets it ram right into the gunman. 1 frame after the bull hits him, the player presses space to fire. The gunman is killed, and the win banner appears about a second later. It's not at all clear what's going on here, but I think that I have a pretty good guess. The win is activated by a certain trigger that is located on the right side of the level area, at the gunman's Y coordinate. The trigger is activated by a physical shape, which may be a body part, or perhaps some invisible physical shape that's included in the rigging that makes the character move. I don't know specifically. When the bull hits the gunman, these shapes are ripped out of place and move throughout the level. Most of the body parts are pushed to the left along with the bull, but depending on the circumstances of the collision, some may also be pushed to the right. It may be that the choice to shoot right after the bull makes contact alters the collisions of the rigging somehow, and makes it more likely that the required shapes will be flung rightward. This is more obvious in the second place run, in which I can more clearly see the gunman's head flying to the right. There may be other shapes that I can't see. Once these shapes are launched about, they can interact with the wind trigger on the right. The field of view stays on the area where the bull was, because that's where the player character's real body remains. The player character is actually Wheelchair Guy. That sliver that's just visible on the bottom of the screen, that's his body. The gunman on the top is just a NPC that's rigged up on motors. It's still possible to win the level, even if the gunman is apparently killed. We don't see any of the human enemies triggering this bug, because their gunshots always compel the gunman to the left. It's only the bull that tears the gunman's body apart in such a way that there's the possibility for some shapes to land rightward. If this strategy were as simple as inputting a single frame-perfect button press, I would say that it's a viable strategy for any % runs, but I doubt that it's that simple. It seems that a lot of this strategy is up to chance. Even if you shoot at just the right moment, the bull may not hit him in just the right way to make the shapes fly in the desired way. I've made several runs of my own in which I reproduced the strategy almost exactly, and it's never worked for me. Though this level is generally a lot buggier and less consistent in JavaScript, so that may be my problem. In any case, This strategy is not viable for an any percent run, not with the current information that we have about it. It's too inconsistent and too poorly understood. It's not worthwhile to risk a run on such a low likelihood of success, when the potential time save is only 20 seconds at most.
Thank you all for watching, and an extra special thanks to Dre for providing feedback on some of my hypotheses. I will cover more featured levels in the next part. Be well.